So this is part 2 of the video. We have lots of shells. You guys are only seeing a very small portion of the shells that we have in our house. But I want to show you some really quick. This is one of our favorites too. This is called a tulip, and this is called a banded tulip. This is called a true tulip. And these two larger ones are also true tulips. This one I actually bought in Haiti. This one I found over at St. Pete. And then the state shell of Florida, does anybody know what it is? If you said horse conch, you are correct. So here are small horse conchs, young ones. Here's a medium-sized one, and here's the largest one I've ever found. I'll hold it up so you can kind of see how big it is. You put it up beside my head, see how large it is? I found this one early in the morning, about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning over at St. Pete. It's one of my favorite shells. Now, one of the things that I want you to understand today is that when shells are in the ocean and they have a creature living in them, they're alive. So each of these is born very, very tiny, like the size of a pencil lead on a pencil. And then they begin to grow. So these horse conchs died when they were young. For whatever reason, something ate them or they washed up into the sun. This one lived to be a very old age. This one's very heavy and very old. And now sometimes you go to the ocean and you'll see what people call a hermit crab living in a shell. Hermit crab is not born in one of these shells. A hermit crab actually is born in the sand or in the mangroves. And they go and they have to have a shell to live in, so they go and find a shell. And sometimes they'll leave one shell and go to another, and especially as they get bigger and then grow up, they need a bigger shell. Now, one of the other things I wanted to show you all is a couple of novelty things that we find. We find all kinds of things in the ocean. And this one here is a large fish bone that we found. Not sure what kind of fish that is. That's a backbone of a fish. See the backbone? And this is called I believe it's an operculum is the correct word. This is the closure or the foot of a shell. So if the mollusk was living inside here, this one's too small for this shell. But if the mollusk were living in here, this would be the foot that it would put down here while it's feeding. And then to close up and keep water out of itself, this would come in here and close up the hole. It's kind of like the door. These are the teeth of a stingray. We find these every now and then. They're hard like bone. They're very neat. They're fun to find. And then we find these every now and then. Anybody know what that is? That's the claw of a crab. Now, one of Mrs. Murphy's favorite shells, she has a couple of her favorites here. This one here, does anybody know what that one looks like? Did anybody say an ear? It kind of looks like an ear, doesn't it? So these are called baby's ears. I'll take out a couple more so you can see them. These are kind of hard to find, and it's hard to find them when they're not broken. This is also one of Mrs. Murphy's favorite shells. What are these called?
Tellins.
Tellins. They're nice and pink. They're kind of easy to find, but you don't find that many of them. Every now and then you'll find a pile of them. And we found these down in Naples, down there on Marco Island. They're really fun to find. Now this one here is a neat one. This one's called an angel's wing. Obviously, how it got its name, it looks like the wing of an angel. These two shells are related, but not the same. They're in the same family. They're a family of shells called moon shells. This is called a nautica, and this one is called shark's eye. I forgot for a second. This one's called a shark's eye. See how it looks like an eye inside? Now this is a shell that you can find very easily at most beaches. This one is called an olive. This is a fairly large one. And then this is a family of shell called Murexes. This is an apple murex, and these two are what you call lace murexes.
Can you show them the other side?
And these are two that we found on the east coast of Florida, down around south of here, and they are also murexes. They're very old. This one's broken on one side. I believe Mrs. Murphy found this one.
Mm-hmm. Tubular inlet.
Now this is an interesting shell here. This is called a Queen's Helmet. This is one that we actually found over at Jupiter. And I believe these two here, these larger ones, I believe we got from Haiti when we lived there. Now one other thing I'd like to show you is the shell of a horseshoe crab. These edges are very sharp. They're like thorns. So the horseshoe crab, would his body and everything would be down here with his feet and his tail sticking out in the back. And I have done nothing to make him shiny. That's just the way he cleaned up after he died. It's illegal to take these off the beach alive, but we find them sometimes already dead.